Hello, and welcome to our virtual tech talk about e-readers. My name is Stephanie, and I am a lead library specialist here with the Martin County Library System. With me today is my co-host, Manuel. Before we get started, I would like to just read this little statement about accessibility. This document may be reproduced upon request in an alternative format by contacting the County ADA Coordinator at 772-320-3131, the County Administration Office at 772-288-5400, Florida Relay 711, or by completing our accessibility feedback form at www.martin.fl.us/accessibility-feedback. So today we'll be talking about what an e-reader is, why you should consider getting an e-reader, different types of e-readers, and e-reader apps. So what is an e-reader? An e-reader is a device where you can read on it, period. That it does one thing, and it does one thing very, very well. So if you're familiar with our library's ebook service, Libby, e-readers are one way that you can read them. You can also sometimes listen to audiobooks on them. It depends on the model, and I'll kind of talk about that a little later. Ebooks use a technology, e-readers, use a technology called e-ink. It's like reading on an actual page instead of a screen. It's much easier to read on an e-ink screen than it is to read on a computer or a smartphone. The vast majority of e-readers are only in black and white, but a very, very small number have color ones. However, it's worth noting that the two biggest brands of e-readers in America, the Kindle and the Kobo, do not support it. I've heard many arguments against e-readers, and the biggest one, you probably are thinking it yourself, is I don't like e-readers. I want to have an actual book to hold in my hands, or you just like the way books smell, and I do too, and I totally understand that. But here's some reasons why you might want to consider getting an e-reader. Again, the use of e-ink. It is easier on the eyes than reading on a smartphone or on your computer. I don't know about you, but when I spend a little too much time on the computer, my eyes tend to start getting headaches, my eyes start kind of drying out. It's just not fun. Another good reason is you can fit thousands of books onto one device. So think about when you travel or if you have to move, you can put a lot of your books onto an e-reader and still have room to spare. If you like reading books on the beach, you like reading by the pool, you like reading in the bathtub, e-readers are much easier to read in direct sunlight, and some of them are water resistant. E-readers can also last longer on than smartphones on a single charge. So one of the things I like is before I go on vacation, I'll load up my e-reader with books. I'll charge it up and turn off the Wi-Fi, which helps prolong its battery life because I'm not going to be needing to download any books. I have them all with me. And by doing this, it'll last up to 2 weeks and sometimes even longer, depending on how much you read. In contrast, my smartphone, I have an iPhone, it maybe will last 2 days if I don't play around with it. But there you go. There's another reason for e-readers. And of course, last and not least, let's talk about accessibility. So if you're having issues with your eyes, you need bigger print, an e-reader, you can adjust the font size so the type is bigger. You can change the typeface. So if one doesn't work, you can use another. It's much easier to hold if you have arthritis or issues with your hands. Me personally, I actually have problems holding things in my hands for long periods of time, particularly in my left hand. So for me, e-readers have been just wonderful. They've really helped it, so I'm able to keep reading again. And this is one of my favorite quotes from the author Stephen Fry. Books are no more threatened by Kindle than stairs by elevators. So I hear a lot of people saying, oh, e-readers are going to replace books, and that's just not the case. That's just not going to happen. Okay, before we go further, do we have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, great. I'm going to keep going. So before I get into the types of e-readers that are most common in the country and in the United States, I'm going to touch on ebook file types. I'm only going to touch on this very briefly because it's way beyond the scope of this presentation, and we're just kind of talking about, you know, what e-readers can read what. So if you're familiar, so there are two general types. There are more, but we're just going to focus on two. There's EPUB and there's the Kindle format, which if you're familiar with Amazon, you're familiar, they run the Kindle. Kindle books can only be read on Kindle devices. Okay, so if you were to get, say, a Kobo or a Nook, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes, they cannot read books that you would download from Amazon. Conversely, if you were to get a Kobo or a Nook, they read EPUBs, which, as I say here, they are the technical standard. This is kind of what we're going towards. They cannot read. You cannot upload a Kindle book into, say, a Kobo. So if that's something, like if you're considering getting an e-reader, you're going to want to keep that in the back of your mind as you're going forward. So we kind of touched on this. We all have heard about the Kindle. This is when you think of an e-reader, this is what you think of. The Kindle is run by Amazon. It was developed in 2007, and as of 2015, the Kindle makes up about 50% of all e-readers worldwide. That's a lot. The Kindle uses a proprietary file type. In other words, the files can only be read on a Kindle device, so it can't read EPUB books. Okay, so if you get a Kindle, you can pretty much only get stuff from Amazon. Now, you may have also heard that Kindles are ad supported. What that means is it's not when you're reading the book, thank goodness, and that's not going to show up. It's usually in your screen when you have like a listing of all the books that you have, like your quote unquote library. It's going to have like a tiny little ad on the bottom of the page. And when your Kindle is in what's called sleep mode, you'll have an ad on the front of the screen. And so another thing you may have heard of is the Kindle Fire. Now, the Kindle Fire isn't technically an e-reader. The Kindle Fire is more like a tablet. So if you're familiar with an iPad, that's closer to what a Kindle Fire is. So if you're looking for something beyond an e-reader and you want to watch, movies and check your email and surf the internet, but you don't want to pay the markup for an iPad, a Kindle Fire may be best for you. But in terms of this presentation and what we're talking about today, a Kindle Fire is not a dedicated e-reader. Coming up next, we have the Kobo, which is by a Japanese company called Rakuten. It originally started in Canada under the name Kobo, but Rakuten bought them. They started in 2010. I think they make up about 13% of all e-readers, or at least the ones just in North America. The Kobo does use EPUB files. So pretty much no matter where you get if it's an EPUB file, no matter where you get it, it's going to read it. That does mean it cannot read Amazon ebooks. The cool thing about Kobo is you can buy from independent booksellers. Okay, so Kobo, like Amazon, Kobo does have its own online bookstore, and you can link it to participating independent bookstores. So the one that I have because I have a Kobo, and I have it linked to a bookstore called Porter Square Books in Massachusetts. So whenever I buy an ebook from the Kobo store, a portion of that proceed goes to Porter Square Books. The cool thing about the Kobo is that it has overdrive built in. Now, Libby is the app that works with Overdrive. Overdrive is our overarching ebook system. Libby is just a little app for it, but you can use your Kobo to access our Overdrive. It's really great. It's not an app. It's just baked right in. It's very convenient. If you set up your Wi-Fi, you just need your library card and your PIN number, and you're good to go. The other great thing about Kobo is there are no ads ever. You are never going to see an ad on a Kobo. The one downside to a Kobo is you probably came into this program only expecting to hear about Kindles, but now you hear about Kobos, and that's why. Kobos aren't as ubiquitous. They're not as well known as a Kindle, but there is a really good support system online. So you just can, like, if you have any questions about your Kobo, you can always, throw the question into Google and you'll get a pretty good result. Last but not least, we're talking about the Nook, which is run through Barnes & Noble. Now, I'm currently at the Jensen Beach Library. I am a stone's throw away for Barnes & Noble. So my first e-reader was a Nook. These were developed in 2009. They also use the EPUB format. So again, if you get your books on Amazon, you cannot read them on the Nook. The cool thing about the Nook is that it has a brick and mortar store. You can go into Barnes & Noble and you can get support for it. Another cool thing is if you take your e-reader, your Nook, into Barnes & Noble, you can use it to read any book for an hour, which, hey, that's pretty cool. That'll give you plenty of time to see, like, hey, if you want to buy the book or not. Similar to the Kindle Fire, there are tablet versions of the Nook. I believe they're run on so they would do kind of a similar thing as a Kindle Fire, but again, they're tablets. They're closer to an iPad, so they're not e-readers per se. The one downside with the Nook is they are not easy to load library books onto. You're going to need a program that's called Adobe Digital Editions. And you would need an Adobe account and a password, and you would essentially check the books out from Overdrive, download them to your computer, put them through Adobe Digital Editions, hook the Nook up to the computer, and transfer them that way. So if you're looking for something that's a little less seamless, this probably isn't for you. But if you like the idea of going into Barnes & Noble, being able to flip through books on your device, this might be perfect. So before I go on about considerations for how to decide what to get in for an e-reader, do we have any questions?
No questions yet.
Okay. So let's say that you're considering getting an e-reader. I'm not gonna recommend a certain one over the other. You gotta put some things into consideration. So think about, what are you going to use it for? Again, if you're getting an e-reader, all it is just reading books. That's all you're going to be able to do on it. And if that's all you want, you don't want something where you can, have your email coming in on the one side, getting a text message, but you want to read, yes, let's address the elephant in the room. If you want a book, if you want to read something and you don't want your email alerts popping up, you're obviously you could get a real book. But if you'd rather, you can absolutely, get an e-reader, and then you don't get those email alerts and those text messages and, hey, I'm going to check Facebook. It's just that. It's just reading. How much do you want to spend? That's another factor to consider. Depending on your budget, e-readers, they can start pretty low. I think the base Kindle is something like $50 or $60, which, hey, yeah, that's quite a lot of money. I think the base Kobo is $80, and I think it's similar with the Nook. So they kind of in that same starting range, and they go up from there depending on what kind of features are in that are in there. Do you need it to be water? Okay, it says waterproof. Let me back that up. This is my fault. It should say water resistant. Okay, so A lot of e-readers today are water resistant. And again, if you plan on reading by the pool, at the beach, in the bathtub, doing dishes, not going to judge, you might want to consider it to be waterproof. Where do you get your books? Now, aside from going to the library and going through our ebooks, going through Overdrive, going through Libby, do you do most of your shopping through Amazon? If you have Amazon Prime, that might be something that leans you more towards getting a Kindle. If you're kind of staying away from Amazon, you want to broaden your options a little bit, you'd probably try either Kobo or Barnes and Noble. They kind of have the same selection. The prices are about the same. Just something to consider there. And do you listen to audiobooks? Now, this is something that kind of surprised me because I thought you can't listen to audiobooks on an e-reader, but yes, you can. And there are some limitations to that. I believe with the Kindle, you need Audible to connect to that. You can't listen to ebooks from the audiobooks. You can't listen to them from the library, unfortunately. Overdrive doesn't let us do that, so that's unfortunate. But if that is something you're considering, that's something, if that's important to you, you might want to look into that. Before I go into e-reader apps, does anybody have any questions?
We have a question, and the first question is, will this presentation cover using an iPad to use the Libby app for library books?
Unfortunately, no. This is just talking about e-readers. I believe we do have Libby presentations on our library's YouTube channel. If you'd like, we can send you a link to them after the presentation, but no, this is just talking about what e-readers are, and if you're what they are, what they do, who makes them, things like that.
We also have another question. Can the Fire Tablet Android device download books through the library on Libby or just on Overdrive?
That is a good question. What's happening near the end of this month is the Overdrive app, because there's two apps to access Overdrive. There's Libby, which is what we prefer you using here at the library, and there's what's called Overdrive Classic. The Overdrive Classic app will no longer be in use at the end of the month. So if you plan on accessing ebooks through your Kindle Fire, what you're going to have to do is go through the browser on your device and go to, there's two websites to access. There's a Libby app, LIBBYAPP.com. And it's very similar to the Libby app that's on your phone, for instance. And you would just type in your library card number and your PIN, and you would access it that way. You can also do martin.overdrive.com. It's another way to access it. Same thing, you just need your library card number and your PIN number. That's how you would do that.
That's all for now.
Okay. So before I continue, I'm just going to point out there are some e-reader apps out there. So let's say you've purchased a Kindle, and there's a book you're reading and you absolutely love it, but you left your Kindle at home and you're at the doctor's office and you need something to read. So you could have the Kindle app on your phone or on your iPad or whatever tablet. They work in very similar ways. I'm just kind of touching on them because, let me back up a little bit. So whatever you buy in one, so say you bought a whole library of Kindle books, if you sync it up with your phone, for instance, you'll get that same library there and it'll show your place, which is great. I believe you can get the Kindle, Kobo, Nook, and Google Books. I believe you can get them regardless of your device. Apple Books is unfortunately just on Apple devices. So if you have an Android phone, you're not going to be able to get to access Apple Books. So that's one downside. And of course, there are plenty of other e-reader apps out there, but I'm just focusing on these, just kind of touching on these 5 right now, because again, we just talked about Kindle, Kobo, and Nook. And then of course, Google and Apple are pretty ubiquitous. So that's my presentation. And before I start wrapping it up, do we have any other questions?
Yes, we have another question. All my Kindle books are on my iPad. Can I get library books for my iPad?
Yes, absolutely. In that case, you would download and install the Libby app. So what you would do is you would go to, in your case, because you have an iPad, you would go to your app store and type in Libby, L-I-B-B-Y. You would type that into your app store, download it to your device, and then just follow the prompts. You would search for Martin County Library. You would type in your library card number and your PIN number, and then you can download them that way. So yes, absolutely.
All right, another question is, does the library still support Access 360?
That is a good question, and unfortunately, we do not. The library does not support Access 360 anymore. We have transferred all to Overdrive. Okay. All right, so that is the end of my presentation. Again, I talked about what an e-reader is, what are some of the features, some advantages, some different types of e-readers that you can find here in the States, why, considerations for when you would want to buy an e-reader, and just touch a little bit about e-reader apps. So if you have any further questions, we have a great thing called Tech Time. They are 30 minutes of dedicated time with a staff person at your local library to discuss tech questions. So if you have a specific nagging tech question you need some help on, contact your local library, get a reservation set up, and we can help you with there. You can either call your local branch or you can sign it up through the website. The address there is martin.fl.us/idea-lab-1-1-tech-help. And again, don't worry if you miss this, I'm going to send this out. We're going to send out all the links in next week. So we also have a really great resource called LinkedIn Learning. I absolutely adore this resource. It's full of amazing online tutorials, basically anything from Photoshop to accounting to QuickBooks. I learned how to use a program called Audacity, which is an audio editing program. Learned it through LinkedIn. It's a great resource. If you want to give that a try, search the library catalog and our website and just type in LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn is all one word. And thank you so much for attending our presentation. If you want to learn more, especially learn about more Idea Lab classes, you can go to our website and look them up. I know we have a lot of Libby questions. I believe in April, we'll be having walk-ins where you can go to, I know Palm City and Jensen Beach have them. I believe Hope Sound is also having them, but that might be something you might be interested in attending if you have Libby questions. Let us know what you liked. If you liked this presentation, let us know. If you didn't, let us know that too, so we know how to make these classes going forward. You can go to our website and just type in library survey on the county website. And also, if you're just curious to find out what an Idea Lab is, you can ask us that too. We'd be more than happy to help. That concludes the presentation for today. My name is Stephanie. My co-host has been Manuel, and we are so happy. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you soon.